Good morning, everyone. I'm AJ Dasani from Ace Accountants and Merkle Sharp, and I'm here again this morning with Steve Jebson of Business Doctors with I think a little bit more of a chat. We're trying to find the balance, I guess, when we were saying this just before we started recording, was trying to find the balance between it being quite conversational, but giving enough good info for something to take away, to pique your interest, to get the conversation going, to look at where you might go with difficult decisions. And I guess with the conversations we've had, everyone's had over the last 3 to 6 months with the cost of living, with inflation, we thought that would be the topic that we start with, because it's one of those things. When you look at your P&L, most people tend to just look at their sales, their turnover as one big number at the end of the year, or if they're really good, they might look at it once a quarter and say, "Oh, good, it's gone up by a little bit, great. Good, sign it off." And I think that for me, that's where for us, Steve comes into the conversation, because it's looking into granularity a little more. And Steve, I think before when we spoke about this as well, you said you had a really good example of sort of how you would look at this slightly differently. So fire away. Welcome, by the way. Good morning. Good to
morning, AJ. It's a two-way conversation, right? There's two of us in this meeting, in this conversation. So look, it's great to be here. And I mean, it's one of these where, for me, looking at your profit and loss is a monthly thing, right? At minimum. And yeah, I do it with all my clients, and we have traditionally spent more time on the top line on what the sales are doing and how do we get more of it, and where are we winning and all the things that go with it. But that's when costs have been stable. So increasingly, we've been spending a lot more time on the bottom half of this equation about costs. So I was with a client, long-term client this week, and same conversations, pricing and cost prices from suppliers on products they sell. But we started to go through the cost lines. So waste, that's up £50 year on year. Yeah, I've got a new waste bill. Okay, it's £50 year on year. Okay, rates, starting to pay rates, benefits have gone, free rates have gone, so it's another 150 quid a month. Okay, that's 150 quid a month. Okay, so your van running costs, that's up 250 this month. Yeah, but cost of diesel, it's now £160 to fill the van. I had some long trips to here and there. Okay, so that's 250. Utilities, so up 150 a month. Yeah, I've just signed a new utilities. So if I add all that stuff up, that's 600 or 700 quid. Right? A month. Right. So we're talking £6,000, £7,000 a year. Right. What are you doing about that? Right. Because I know this business. It's profitable. It's not the most profitable business in the world. It's nicely growing. All the metrics are pretty decent, but that kind of hit is quite important. In fact, it's about 4% of turnover on a business that makes about a 10% margin, right? So the reality is, if you look at lines individually, yeah, it's significant. And I think one of the challenges is we sit there and we get the electricity bill and it's 100 quid. Well, on its own, 100 quid doesn't sound too bad. But apart from it's £1,200 a year, and for me, that's a bit of a holiday and all the stuff that goes with it, right? And then a couple of days later, you get your waste bill and it's 50 quid. So that, so you go, oh yeah, 50 quid, I've got to pay the 50 quid. And so individually, they don't necessarily all look too bad, right? And you might be too busy because of everything else going on, customers and employees and HMRC and your accountant and your business coach and everybody else giving you a hard time. And you've really only got three options, right? You can either buy it cheaper, find a way of getting it cheaper than you're currently paying for it. Okay.
And how likely is that these days?
Not easy, right? You're not going to get utilities cheaper. You can't buy diesel cheaper. Waste, there's not many people can do it. So it's not easy.
Unless you're going to start fly tipping.
Yeah, exactly.
Which we're not advocating.
So we're not. Absolutely. Should recycle more. Come on, be green. So there's this thing about can you buy it cheaper? And ultimately, we all try that, right? But unrealistic right now. Can you use less, right? Because that's the next question. And again, you can drive the van less. You could make it can be more efficient on drops so that it's not traveling in between. So you can use less, and every business can use less. It sometimes take a bit of thinking. It sometimes take a change in behaviour. It's like when you sit there and talk about photocopying. Make sure you photocopy in black and white versus colour.
I did.
Because it saves massive amounts of cash, right? But you still see people printing in colour for no reason. Anyway,
And single-sided.
And single-sided, yeah, AJ, you're absolutely right. So that's a real bugbear of mine. So you can use less. And then the third thing, and the only other option is I have to pass it on, right? Because I can't absorb it. I can't afford to absorb it. I don't think I can afford to absorb it. Therefore, somebody has to pay, and ultimately the customer pays, right?
Yeah.
And then we get into the argument about putting prices up, right? And that becomes a real contentious issue for most small business.
And I think that is the crux of the matter. I think that is the biggest part of this, almost this conversation is, I think there's this, even I'm like this, if I'm totally honest, hands up on this, is you're very loath to increase fees, really. I mean, before, we've only ever really done a couple of percent every other year because inflation was low, and even then I sort of felt quite shy doing it because I felt like I've sort of agreed a fee in advance with the client and don't really want to make that much higher. But I think there is, we are now at that point where I think that conversations have to be had. I'm certainly, like I was saying to you before we started, I'm certainly at the point where I think towards the end of the year, or most definitely in the new year, we will have to raise our prices in line with inflation because, we're having to pay staff more. We're having to pay more for our office. Our software is costing more. Then it was exactly the same as you said with your client. All those granular items on the P&L that individually are going up are amounting to much more. So, and again, I think this is where you come into it. So, gone over to you again on that. How do you generally look at that side of things with clients?
Well, the first thing is for everybody worries about being competitive, right? And everybody worries that putting prices up means I'll sell less. Okay, and inevitably, the rules of economics mean that there is probably something like that might happen, right? But my first question is, how do you actually sell right now? On the whole, no, you're not the cheapest, right? I don't work with any client, big or small, who's the cheapest in their sector, right? Not, maybe that's me, I don't know, but I don't know anybody who can sit there and say, I sell on price.
Yeah.
Right? So if you don't sell on price, what do you sell on? Right? Service, attention to detail, care, love, years of experience, all the things that make you and your business you. So for me, that's the bit your customers value. So if that's what they value, if you talk to them more about that, you have a better chance of them understanding your position. And as I said to you before we started, for me, pricing in a B2B business like you've got it's about being transparent and honest. It's like 12 weeks out from when you're going to do it, really letting them know and saying, look, we've tried. This is where we get to. We thought you should know. And this is what we're going to do, right? And being transparent and honest. And with the client I'm talking to, the reality is he's moving prices now nearly every month because costs of other stuff that he sees directly coming in. So actually, I think we're in a position where price worry, competitive worry has been a bit fractured because there's so much change. Yeah. Right? There's so much price change. Yes, you need to be really worried about volume because the challenge right now is the consumer is challenged as well. They are challenged. Utility bills in houses are going up hundreds of pounds. So your volume is probably going to be challenged anyway because customers are likely to be buying less. And it may be short term. I've got a couple of retail clients who had a terrible August. September's looked a bit better. But you're not the cheapest. Therefore, talk about what they value from you and be honest. The other unfortunate realization is if you don't push the prices up, how long can you last?
You're not going to have a business. That's exactly what I was going to say as well, is there's only so long you can do this because if you don't have a business, you can't provide the service in the first place. So there you have to safeguard the longevity of your business ultimately.
And most businesses spend too much time worrying about the pricing they charge, but never say it. And not enough about shouting about how great they are at other stuff. And service, care and attention, experience, doing it properly. This is why people come to you to small businesses. That's why they come, right? And that costs. And if they're not prepared to pay, well, I'm really sorry, but that is sort of their choice. But if you are going to because the other challenge or conversation is, right, okay, fine. Don't put it up. How do we save 4%?
Yeah.
How do we save 4%?
Because that's.
Or how do we grow volume? How do we grow volume to cover it? Because you're then going to have to invest in marketing, for example. You're going to spend some money on searches or paying
or even your own time in marketing,
your
going
own
out there,
time, right?
networking, right? Valuing your own time as well.
Exactly. So for me, now in that there are equally, the best thing is to be clever about it. There are some things that can go up higher, some things that can go up lower. If you blanket it, you deserve to be slightly kicked across the head by your customers because you've gone 4% on everything. The reality is there's some stuff you can get more on, there's some stuff you get less on. So if you know your margins already, your gross margins on product sales, and that's not always easy, just try and be clever and go, look, that stuff is more luxurious or more service. I'm going to charge a bit more for that one. This stuff's a bit more essential. I'm going to have to absorb a bit more here, right? Sure. And that's about as clever as I get with it, frankly, because that's about as close as the understanding most people have is if that is luxurious or service orientated, chuck a bit more on it. This stuff that's a bit more essential, maybe only put 2 or 3%. Yeah. But you've got to put something, right? But the other recommendation, AJ, is check it in a month's time. You know, when you put your price, change your prices, then have a look. You know, check it every week. You know my background. I worked in big retailers like Superdrug. You know, at Superdrug, I got sales performers texted to me 4 times a day.
That's great.
Saturdays and Sundays as well.
Wow.
That's how close that business is to what he's selling. Right. And we would make changes on a Friday lunchtime for Monday if we weren't performing correctly. Right. It's just the way that business trades hard.
Yeah.
So trade your business.
But there's a lesson to be learned with that as well. That's having that kind of level of attention to detail is I mean, I think for most businesses probably, I guess, a little bit difficult.
That's extreme. It's extreme.
But it's something it's I guess a learning point in terms of just being a little bit more aware of the impact of the decisions you make, I guess, is what you're saying, where, okay, you've made that decision now, see how it's actually affecting what you're doing the following month. And again, that's probably why we're having this conversation. That is why we're having this conversation, because that is something you're struggling doing. Genuinely, look, it was something that's a struggle for you, and you do want to grow your business and you want to have a sustainable business. And that is exactly why we recommend Steve. So it's a lovely little segue onto sort of the conclusion of this little bit of a conversation for this week, but for sure, that's exactly what Steve is there for. That's exactly what Business Doctor is there for, and that's why we refer Steve, because that's ultimately the bottom line. It's having accountability. It's having someone there. I'm speaking as someone who's benefited from business coaching before, and my clients really benefit from your coaching, Steve. So thank you so much for that as well. Thank you so much for being on with me this morning, and now look forward to having a chat again in a couple of weeks' time. We've got another couple of topics, at least initially, we're going to discuss. And obviously, if you guys have a topic you'd like us to discuss, there's a particular issue that you face, etc., feel free to stick a comment, drop us an email, drop Steve an email. His contact details will be at the bottom of this video as well in the comments. So feel free to reach out. And again, thank you very much, Steve, for joining me this morning.
Good to speak to you, AJ, as always.
Take care. Have a nice day.
Cheers.